Hi, Freedomizers and friends. This is Tiger Lily. Today is Valentine's Day, and this is a YouTube archive of the best of my radio show last Sunday. It was February the 12th, and finally I didn't have to compete with the Super Bowl. So, a quick announcement that I forgot to mention on my show is that I accepted a Freedomizer Radio prime time slot on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time beginning tomorrow. So, I hope you'll tune in. I'm pasting links onto this YouTube description, and you can also Facebook me on facebook.com/tlroar. This Sunday I had the most online listeners ever for my time slot, probably partly because the Super Bowl is over, but more importantly, I think it's because my guest had some extraordinary things to say. His name is Bill Buppert, founder of ZeroGov.com, and I credit Bill a lot for opening my mind to political critical thinking. If you'd like to listen to the entire show, you could go to freedomizerradio.com. Next to the home link, you'll see a link that says FR Tour, and click on that and you'll find my show archived. It's called Tiger Lily's Freedom Roar. So let's get right to some of Bill's controversial but well thought out views.
We have the privilege to bear arms, sometimes, but sometimes not. The government decides when we can exercise that privilege.
It's feline fury time.
Bill, I wanted to give my listeners a little introduction about you and how I met you. I met you at the Jose Guarena Memorial.
Stuart Rose and I have known each other with Oath Keepers for a while, and he invited me to come and speak on behalf of Guarena's widow and the small conference that we had at the time, because he was very concerned about what was happening down here and the fact that we have this man who tries to defend his own castle who gets gunned down by this sheriff's goon squad. And in essence, what I talked about was that we live in a prison state today, and you spend a lot of time yourself evangelizing and speaking in depth about your own experiences and the experiences of unfortunates who get caught in this vast criminal conspiracy called the police state in these United States. And in this case, what happens is the man goes to defend himself. 72 rounds are expended by this elite SWAT unit from the Sheriff's Department. 21 of those rounds land in the periphery of Guarena's body. And I say periphery of Guarena's body because it took the man an hour and a half to die, and he died within that hour and a half while his daughter, I think it was his wife and his toddler were in the house, and they refused for security reasons for the paramedics to come in to try to save his life. So what I spoke of the fact that, and you'll find this interesting, at the peak of Joseph Stalin's Soviet Union in 1952, the prison population was half the total prison population of everybody in this country today for those who are on probation, on parole, and in cages of any type from the local to the federal level. So that's what brought me to the Oath Keepers Guarena Memorial.
And you were the first person that got up there and you said, I've been sitting here listening to everybody say, it's not the police, it's the policies. I'm here to say, bull. What did you think when you heard my evangelism, as you called it, of what has gone on in my life as far as the police state and encountering this web?
My heart goes out to you because I can empathize, because I have 5 children, and we all have members of our family, whether it's our immediate family or our extended family, who have had brushes with the law. And some of those brushes with the law have involved being caged or being fined or having their lives impacted. In those 7 million human beings I just mentioned who are on parole, on probation, and caged in America, as you and I are having this program, all have family members. And you and I both know that once, and I call it the legal system, I don't call it the justice system, because it's a processing system to get people into it, because it's also a money-making enterprise. Does the number 88% mean anything to you when it comes to paying fines and such? Did you notice that there's always an 88% levy or fine increase?
No.
Or yes, there is. In the state of Arizona, that's the way they do it. It's a huge money-making enterprise, and you and I, our family members, every American is subject to being kidnapped, they call it arresting, kidnapped, fined, caged, maimed, or killed at any time under any pretense by this vast Praetorian Guard dressed in costumes, carrying guns, with the authority and a responsibility on the part of the state to make sure that they can keep us all in line, and that if we don't do it, they literally have a license to kill. That's not freedom. That's a slave society, and that's where we live now. But as far as the word anarchist, it is a very loaded term. And it's a loaded term because we have had two presidents who were murdered supposedly by anarchists. We have had European monarchs murdered by anarchists. And when you say anarchist, you can almost make a psychological association like a Rorschach test of where, bomb throwers, people who want violence. No, what anarchy means absent the state, no state, a stateless society, a society in which government is not imposed anywhere but from within. In other words, the only government that I would advocate myself is self-government, and I think that is the only legitimate government. I refer to myself now, for the most part, as an abolitionist. William Wilberforce was a British parliamentarian in the 18th and 19th century who was probably singularly responsible in the Western world for taking the institution of chattel slavery, the ownership of other human beings and the purchase and selling thereof. With blacks and whites, you name the colors, everyone's been subject to slavery for 5 millennia in recorded human history, both Western and Eastern. And he said, it is wrong to own other men. And he would look at a lot of people on both sides of the aisle at the early part of the 19th century, in which there were these great religious awakenings and these Christian awakenings, because you had people who would thump the Bible, and I'm not a Christian, by the way, who would thump the Bible and they say, but the Bible says I can own slaves, and it says it's righteous, and it says that God endorses that. That's another argument altogether. So what I see my charter as, and what I see my evangelism as, is to convince people that slavery isn't gone, and that the only way we can eliminate chattel slavery, regulatory slavery, debt slavery, and all of these other kind of things is to finally come to the deliverance, and Stefan Molyneux is brilliant about producing videos and speaking to this, that what holds us in fealty to the government is fear. What holds us to the government as far as their ownership of us is the fact that every one of us, and you say this on show after show with grisly anecdote after grisly anecdote, in that singular, compelling way that you do, that the way the police behave is such that they have turned us into a helot society. The helots were the 90% of the human population in Sparta that allowed the Spartans to be a military society. And we're becoming that way ourselves. And ask yourself this. No matter how awful a politician may be he Hitler, Stalin, Obama, Clinton, Ronald Reagan, you name whoever your particular evil politician is, no matter what they pass as a law, or their parliament or Congress passed as a law, if it couldn't be enforced, what would it matter? So my main contention is that cops are the number one threat to human liberty on earth.
Bill had an astonishing revelation about Dr. Martin Luther King. He also talked about Kelly Thomas, a homeless man that was brutally beaten by cops in Fullerton, California. He described how, in a stateless society, how it is that we should deal with real criminals as opposed to the many nonviolent criminals that we currently cage. He talked about that and much, much more. You can hear the entire interview archived on freedomizerradio.com.